Hello, American Lit Children, coming to you live from 555 Santa Fe Trail here in Metamora, Illinois. Nice to see you. As you can see, I went downhill quickly. This is what happens when I'm not forced to function with other people. I look like a sloth, which is kind of exciting, I think. Luckily, though, in this video, my teeth look super white, so I'm feeling good about myself. I do want to let you know that I am next to my dog here. Can you see him? He's tired. He's had a hard day. And also very close to my egg chair that Connor Lopez made fun of me for purchasing last year. So, joke's on him. So, we're going to be starting part 2 today in Fahrenheit 451. You do have a discussion board today, and then I gave you guys that one pager that you're supposed to pick 4 items from those items listed, like quotes, summary, symbolism. You'll do that, but you won't do that yet because we won't be done with part 2, because the one pager is essentially kind of making a visual and Spark Notes version of part 2, which Ray Bradbury would have hated, but Ray Bradbury would be in his feelings right now about the world anyway. So we're going to do a one pager for part 2, but you don't have to do that yet because we have to get through part 2 first. And obviously, we're starting part 2 on a Friday, and then you have spring break. So you'll have a break next week, and then we'll just kind of see where we're at in terms of when we're coming back to school, if we're coming back on the 31st or what the deal is. So I am hopeful that we will be back at school. I do want to let you know, though, I know it's very enticing to not do all this stuff. Like, oh, I don't need to do any of that. It's an act of God and blah, 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 blah. And I get that. It's enticing for me, too. What I really love to do right now is watch Married at First Sight on Hulu and not make YouTube videos for all of my classes, which I've been doing, and creating curriculums and uploading YouTube videos and trying to get my Wi-Fi to work and trying to do a Google Meet. But I have an obligation to you as your teacher, and I've had that conversation with you before. I'm not going to stop teaching because things are a mess. Your education is very important to me, and I'm hoping that it's important to you. I miss you guys, and this is my way of staying connected to you, so we're going to keep on doing it. We're starting today the sieve in the sand. When you guys were little, did you ever go to the beach or have like a sandbox? And do you remember having like this thing that like had a bunch of holes in the bottom, and you'd put sand in and you'd shake it, right? Kind of like panning for gold, and all the sand would fall out the bottom, and then what was left was larger rocks and stuff like that. That's a sieve, essentially. It's kind of like a strainer, like you do your spaghetti noodles. It's kind of like a strainer, but for sand. So this part of the book is called The Sieve and the Sand. And it has a lot of meaning in that. The sieve, the shaker, is Montag's brain. And the sand is the truth and the knowledge he wants to gain. He's realized that he's kind of lived a lie his whole life. He's 30 years old. His job is meaningless to him now. He comes from a line of firemen, and he realizes that they are not doing what's right. Like, he's been fed a lie his whole life. So now he's trying desperately to gather as much knowledge as he can. His brain is like a sieve, right? It's like shake. It's all falling out. All this sand is just falling out, falling out. All this knowledge. He can't learn it. I think about, like, for me, the sieve is my brain and the sand is math. Like, I can do algebra, but girl, you give me a geometry problem and we're going to have an issue. I think all of us have that part of something where we feel we can't learn it. Like, that's our sand, right? You're going to find in this section of the book that Montag realizes that his life has kind of been a lie, And he realizes that via a 16-year-old girl. And that's what I love about Ray Bradbury. He makes the most powerful character a 16-year-old. And then he kills her off. Just like that. I love that about him. Not that he killed her off, but just this fact that the most powerful character in the book was a teenager. I mean, you can talk all day about how young people have made more change in history than any other people. You look in the Bible, and a majority of younger individuals are the ones that are making the huge changes. And that's the same for in any history book. You talk about young people, your teenagers, early 20s, early 30s. Those are young people that should be scared to rock the boat, but they do it. So today we're going to be looking at how Montag's going to deal with having all those books in the vent. He knows Beatty's after him. He knows something's up. He's trying to get his wife Mildred in on this, and Mildred just wants to be entertained. She don't even care. So while we're reading this, I want you to think of a few things. A few kind of major themes is this idea that human life is not precious anymore. It's very, here today, gone tomorrow. I'm going to die no matter what. Let me do what I want to do. They're going to die no matter what. It's not a big deal. Human life is not precious in this society. Knowledge and questioning why is not acceptable. Uniqueness is not acceptable. And just this pleasure to be entertained is all that is wanted. And I just want you to think about that because, let's be honest here, guys. We're in quarantine. We're not really supposed to be leaving our homes. I had to go out today for something, and there was people out and about, but we are asked to stay home, and people are kind of handling it a couple of different ways. Some people are climbing the walls, going crazy, going out, going to movies, doing what they can until they're told they cannot via police, right? And then you have the people that are like, oh, yes, tell me to stay inside. I'll be there. That's my husband. He's down in the basement right now shooting his bow, and he's like, wake me up in May. He's so happy to just he's kind of an introvert. And then you have people like me that I'm in a place now where I'm realizing quickly that it's very difficult for me to sit still. And I have put a lot of my value in other people. And when you're quarantined, there's really nobody to tell you how great you are. There's really nobody to tell you how awful you are. There's really nobody to give you the high five and the accolade. And you learn quickly that what you thought was a drive you had in yourself to do things was really just a routine. And you get into a rut. So I am learning to slow down, which is very hard for me. So I want you to be thinking about that. We have this book here. Could you imagine these people going into quarantine? Could you imagine? It would be awful. Awful. All they want to do is be entertained and drive fast and destroy things and hurt people. And how close are we to that society? I never thought I would teach this book and this would be happening in our world. So I just want you to be thinking about that. 67. We're going to read 67 to 76 today. They read the long afternoon through while the cold November rain fell from the sky upon the quiet house. They sat in the hall because the parlor was so empty and gray-looking without its walls lit with orange and yellow confetti and skyrockets and women in gold mesh dresses and men in black velvet pulling 100-pound rabbits from silver hats. The parlor was dead. and Mildred kept peering in at it with a blank expression. As Montag paced the floor and came back and squatted down and read a few pages as many as 10 times aloud. We cannot tell the precise moment when friendship formed, as in filling a vessel drop by drop, there is at least a drop which makes it run over. So in a series of kindnesses, there is at least one which makes the heart run over. Montag listened to the rain. Is that what it was in the girl next door? I tried so hard to figure. Oh, she's dead. Let's talk about someone alive, for goodness sakes. Montag did not look back at his wife as he went trembling along the hall to the kitchen, where he stood a long time watching it rain, and it hit the windows before he came back down the hall in the gray light, waiting for the tremble to subside. He opened another book. That favorite subject, myself. He squatted at the wall. That favorite subject, myself? I understand that one, said Mildred. But Clarice's favorite subject wasn't herself. It was everyone else and me. She was the first person in a good many years I've really liked. She was the first person I can remember who really looked straight at me as if I counted. He lifted the two books. These men have been dead a long time, but I know their words point at one way or another to Clarice. I want you to pay attention here, guys, to the weather. It's raining, it's trembling down, and that weather really mirrors what is going on here. Montag is trying to grab a hold of that rain, grab a hold of that knowledge, and in the midst of it, his world is tumbling. His world is tumbling down, and he wants so badly to understand what he's reading, and he doesn't get it. And his wife doesn't care. Outside the front door, in the rain, a faint scratching. Montag froze. He saw Mildred thrust herself back to the wall and gasp. Someone, the door. Why doesn't the door voice tell us? I shut it off. Under the door sill, a slow, probing sniff, an exhalation of electronic steam. What is it? Mildred laughed. It's only a dog, that's what. You want me to shoo him away? Stay where you are. Silence. The cold rain falling, and the smell of the blue electricity blowing under the locked door. Let's get back to work, said Montag quietly. Mildred kicked at the books. Books aren't people. You read and I look all around, but there isn't anybody to be entertained. He stared at the parlor that was dead and the gray as the waters of an ocean that might teem with life if they switched on the electronic sun. Now, said Mildred, my family is people. They tell me things. I laugh, they laugh, and the colors. Yes, I know. And besides, if Captain Beatty knew about those books, she thought about it. Her face grew amazed and then horrified. He might come and burn the house and the family. That would be awful. Think of our investment. Why should I read? What for? Mildred just wants to be entertained in the parlor. Turn on the TVs and let's party. What for? Why? Said Montag. I saw the damnedest snake in the world the other night. It was dead, but it was alive. It could see, but it could not see. You want to see that snake? It's at the emergency hospital where they filed a report to all the junk the snake got out of you. Would you like to go and check their file? Maybe you'd look under Guy Montag, or maybe under Fear or War. Would you like to go to that house that burnt last night and rake ashes for the bones of the woman who set fire to her own house? What about Clarice McClellan? Where do we look for her? The morgue? Listen! The bombers crossed the sky and crossed the sky over the house, gasping, murmuring, whistling like an immense invisible fan circling in emptiness. These jets are leading up to something, guys. They're going, they're going, they're going. They're just going to keep coming more and more because it's leading up to something symbolic. Jesus God, said Montag. Every hour, so many damn things in the sky. How in the hell do those bombers get up there every single second of our lives? Why doesn't someone want to talk about it? We've started and won 2 atomic wars since 2022. Is it because we're having so much fun at home we've forgotten the world? Is it because we're so rich and the world's so poor and we just don't care if they are? I've heard rumors. The world is starving, but we're well fed. Is it true? The world works hard and we play? Is that why we're hated so much? I've heard rumors about hate too, once in a long while over the years. Do you know why? I don't, that's sure. Maybe the books can get us half out of the cave. That just might stop us from making the same damn insane mistakes. I don't hear those idiot bastards in the parlors talking about that. God, Millie, don't you see? An hour a day, 2 hours with these books, and maybe 2 atomic wars in 2022. We're well fed. The world is starving. We play, they hurt. Is that true now? We're well fed, they starve. We play, they hurt. We don't care. Is that true now? The telephone rang. Mildred snatched the phone. Anne! She laughed. Yes, the White Clown's on tonight. Montag walked to the kitchen and threw the book down. Montag, he said, you were really stupid. Where do we go from here? Do we turn the books in? Forget it? He opened the book to read over Mildred's laughter. Poor Millie, he thought. Poor Montag. It's mud to you, too. But where do we get help? Where do you find a teacher this late? Hold on. He shut his eyes. Yes, of course. Again, he found himself thinking of that green park a year ago. The thought had been with him many times recently, but now he remembered how it was that day in the city park when he had seen that old man in the black suit hide something quickly in his coat. The old man leapt up as if to run, and Montag had said to him, "Wait!" "I haven't done anything," cried the old man, trembling. This is a flashback. A year ago, Montag met a man in a park who was hiding something in his jacket. "No one said you did." They had sat in the green soft light without saying a word for a moment, and then Montag talked about the weather, and then the old man responded with pale voice. It was a strange, quiet meeting. The old man admitted to being a retired English professor who had been thrown out upon the world 40 years ago when the last liberal arts college shut down for the lack of patronage. His name was Faber. And when he finally lost his fear of Montag, he talked in a candescent voice, looking at the sky and the trees and the green park. And when an hour had passed, he said something to Montag, and Montag sensed it was a rhymeless poem. Then the old man grew even more courageous and said something else, and that was a poem too. Faber held his hand over his left coat pocket and spoke these words gently, and Montag knew if he reached out, he might pull out a book of poetry from this man's coat. But he did not reach out. His hand stayed on his knees, numbed and useless. "I don't talk things, sir," Faber said. "I talk meaning of things. I sit here and I know I'm alive." What does that mean? I don't talk things. I talk the meaning of things. I talk deep. I don't talk crap. I talk about meaning. I know I'm alive. That was all there was to it, really. An hour of monologue, a poem, a comment, and then without either acknowledging the fact that Montag was a fireman, Faber, with a certain trembling, wrote his address on a slip of paper. "For your file," he said, "in case you decide to be angry with me." "I'm not angry," Montag said, surprised. Great flashback. Montag had already had an intrigue in books, and he could have arrested Faber right there, burned his house down, the whole thing. But he was slowly questioning already. Mildred shrieked with laughter in the hall. Montag went to the bedroom closet and flipped through his file wallet to the headings "Future Investigations?" Faber's name was there. He hadn't turned it in and he hadn't erased it either. He dialed the call on a secondary phone. The phone on the far end of the line called Faber's name a dozen times before the professor answered in a faint voice. Montag identified himself and was met with a lengthy silence. "Yes, Mr. Montag?" "Professor Faber, I have a rather odd question to ask. How many copies of the Bible are left in this country?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I want to know if there are any copies left at all. This is some sort of trap. I can't talk to just anyone on the phone. How many copies of Shakespeare, of Plato?" "None. You know as well as I do, none." Faber hung up. Montag put down the phone. None? A thing he knew, of course, from the firehouse listing, but somehow he had wanted to hear it from Faber himself. In the hall, Mildred's face was suffused with excitement. "Well, the ladies are coming over." Montag showed her a book. "This is the Old and the New Testament, and—" "Don't start that again." "It might be the last copy in this part of the world." "You've got to hand it back tonight, don't you? Captain Beatty knows you've got it, doesn't he?" "I don't know if he knows which book I stole, but how do I choose a substitute? Do I turn in Mr. Jefferson? Mr. Thoreau? Which is least valuable? If I pick up a substitute and Beatty knows which book I stole, he'll guess we've got an entire library here." Mildred's mouth twitched. "See what you're doing? You'll ruin us. Who's more important, me or that Bible?" She was beginning to shriek now, sitting there like a wax doll melting in its own heat. He could hear Beatty's voice. "Sit down, Montag. Watch. Delicately, like the petals of a flower. Light the first page, light the second page. Each becomes a black butterfly. Beautiful, eh? Like the third page, from the second and so on, chain smoking, chapter by chapter. All the silly things the words mean, all the false promises, all the second-hand notions and the time-worn philosophies." There sat Beatty, perspiring gently, the floor littered with swarms of black moths that had died in a single storm. Mildred stopped screaming as quickly as she started. Montag was not listening. "There's only one thing to do," he said. "Sometime before the night, when I give the book back to Beatty, I've got to have a duplicate made." "You'll be here for the White Clown tonight? And the ladies are coming over," cried Mildred. Montag stopped at the door with his back turned. "Millie?" A silence. "What?" "Millie, does the White Clown love you?" No answer. "Millie, does—" He licked his lips. "Does your family love you? Love you very much? Love you with all their heart and soul, Millie?" He felt her blinking slowly at the back of his neck. "Why do you ask a silly question like that?" He felt he wanted to cry, but nothing would to happen to his eyes or his mouth. If you see that dog outside, said Mildred, give him a kick for me. He hesitated, listening at the door. He opened it and stepped out. The rain had stopped and the sun was sitting in the clear sky. The street and the lawn and the porch were empty. He let his breath go in a great sigh. He slammed the door. He was on the subway. I'm numb, he thought. When did the numbness really begin in my face, in my body, the night I kicked that pill bottle in the dark? Like kicking a buried mine. The numbness will go away, he thought. It'll take time, but I'll do it, or Faber will do it for me. Someone, somewhere will give me back the old face and the old hands the way they were. Even the smile, he thought, and the old burnt-in smile that's gone. I'm lost without it. The subway fled past him, cream-tile jet black, cream-tile jet black, numerals and darkness and more darkness, and the total adding up itself. Once as a child he had sat upon a yellow dune by the sea in the middle of a blue and hot summer day, trying to fill a sieve with sand, because some cruel cousin had said, "Fill that sieve with sand and I'll give you $1." And the faster he poured, the faster it sifted with the hot whispering. His hands were tired, the sand was boiling, the sieve was empty. He seated there in the midst of July without the sound. He felt the tears move down his cheeks. Knowledge. Now as the vacuum underground rushed him through the dead cellars of town, jolting him, he remembered the terrible logic of the sieve. And he looked down and he saw that he was carrying the Bible open. There were people in the suction train, but he held the book in his hands, and the silly thought came to him. If you read fast and you read all, maybe some of the sand will stay in the sieve. But he read, and the words fell through, and he thought in a few hours there would be Beatty, and here will be me handing this over. So no phrase must escape me. Each line must be memorized. I will myself do it. He clenched the book in his fist. Trumpets blared. In the train, in the subway, they're constantly playing commercials to keep people entertained. So he's trying to start to read the Bible, which I think that's really interesting, that Ray Bradbury, out of all of these books, picks the Bible to be the book that Montag stole and the book that he is now trying to memorize and duplicate. Talk about the beginning of the world, the end of the world. That's kind of where we're going with this. It's going to be really interesting. But we're in the subway. He's trying to read the Bible. He's like openly doing this. And all of a sudden there's this commercial that just starts coming on. Dedham's Dedifries. They toil not. Dedham's. Consider the lilies of the field. Shut up. Shut up. Dedifries. He tore the book open and flipped the pages and felt of them as if he were blind. He picked at the shapes of the individual letters, not blinking. Dedham's, spelled D-E-N. They toil not, neither do they. A fierce whisper of hot sand through the empty sieve. Dedham's does it. Consider the lilies, the lilies, the lilies. Dedham's dental detergent. Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! It was a plea, a cry so terrible that Montag felt himself on his feet. The shocked inhabitants of the loud car staring at him, moving back from this man with their insane, gorged face, the gibbering, dry mouth, the flapping book in his fist. The people who had been sitting a moment before, tapping their feet to the rhythm of Dedham's Dedifries, Dedham's Dandy Dental Detergent, Dedham's Dedifries, Dedifries, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The people whose mouths had been faintly twitching the words of Dedham's Dedifries, Dedham's Dedifries. The train radio vomited words in Montag in retaliation. A great tonload of music made of tin, of copper, of silver, of chromium, of brass. The people were pounded into submission. They did not run. There was no place to run. The great air train fell down its shaft into the earth. So he's trying to memorize this book. And all he's hearing is this commercial over and over again. And everybody's on the train dancing to this commercial. And he flips. And they all look at him like, what is going on with this guy? Lilies of the field. Denims. Lilies, I said. The people stared. Call the guard. The man's off. Nullview. The train hissed to a stop. Nullview. A cry. Denims. A whisper. Montag's mouth barely moved. Lilies. The train door whistled open. Montag stood. The door gasped, started shut. Only then did he leap past the other passengers, screaming in his mind, plunged through the slicing door only in time. He ran on the white tile upon the tunnel, ignoring the escalators, because he wanted to feel his feet move, arms swing, lungs clench, unclench, feel his throat grow raw with air. A voice drifted after him. Denims, denims, denims. The train hissed like a snake. The train vanished in its hole. This is one of the most confusing parts of the book when you read it on your own, because you're like, what is this denims dentifrice? All it is an annoying commercial that will not go away, and all Montag wants is silence, because he is desperate to fill that sieve with that sand, to learn from the Bible, to touch it, to see those words, to understand it. He's desperate. He's desperate. And he's got nobody at all to depend on until now. Till we meet again. Enjoy your spring break. I want to introduce you to someone. He's hiding, but he's learning about Fahrenheit 451 with me. Isn't he cute? I can't say there's a reason this is happening right now, but I can say it has taught me what's important. He's important. You're important.
But I'm more important.
But he's more important. I'll see you guys soon.